those are basically, I mean, from the Tibetan, but works in the same manner in Chinese, yeah. So we have Vidhi, Sadhana, 2 words for Sadhana, Gomtam, the meditation manual, Stotra would be the laudations, oral transmissions, the Upadeshas, Mangakya, and also the Dzungi, the expositions of teachings. And again, yeah, this is something which we all find those. And the one-to-one correspondence, when I said, basically means that we have those textual, we have those sadhanas or vidhis in the Tangut texts, and basically we have corresponding images, which were also discovered in Harahota. So there is really this symmetry here. And this is again very nicely revealed and shows us a lot of things. And last but not least, the problem, well, not last, but yeah. 5 more minutes? Just the problem of Tangut Taoism. There is this very interesting thing, because you know, that thing about Taoism in Xixia is very controversial. Because the first Tangut emperor, Yuan Hao, he had a son. Now the son was a very, I would say, devout Taoist. And he practiced all over. And he practiced to such a degree that finally he reached that stage where he only fed on his own saliva, right? He didn't eat anything. So, yeah, he never took the 5 cereals. And so he was practicing so nicely that he eventually starved himself to death. Yeah? And then Yuan Hao said, well, what kind of religion is that? One is not supposed to starve to death. I mean, everybody was saying that it's not so, and he can deliver it from his body, and he's now in heaven. It's just kind of crap. he's just dead. And so Taoism was not particular, but there is again this problem, yeah? Because when we look into the Tangut law code, then we will see that there were basically 3 institutions actually ranking very high in the Tangut legal system. The so-called gundas, the departments or the offices of virtue. The offices of virtue. Now, these offices of virtue, why there were 3? Because there were 2 for Buddhists, but 1 for Taoists. Now, the funny thing is that here is this excerpt from the Tiansen Law Code, the very famous, the famous paragraph which is translated all over. This is the list of the mandatory texts which the monks, the Buddhist monks, were supposed to memorize, or at least to be in good command of. Apart from this, in the next page, there is the list of Taoist scriptures, which were also mandatory for the people who wanted to become established Taoist monks or people, or the leaders of the Taoist community. Now, the problem is as follows. Whereas these texts, like the Humane Kings, the Manjushri Namasamgiti, the vows of Samandabhadra, the ritual of the 35 Buddhas, the Mahasahasra Prajnaparamita, the thousand, the sutra protecting 1,000 states, these are all found and in a variety of copies in the Tangut collections. They're all there. All the texts which were prescribed by to the Buddhist communities. Whereas those texts which were supposedly distributed or were for the, not distributed, established as official canon for the Taoists, none of that is discovered. Some Taoist fragments are available in Chinese. So far, none of those texts was ever found translated into Tangut, not even in fragments. The only thing, and the whole idea of Taoism in Tangut is actually very funny, yeah, because we say Taos, yeah, that's the Chinese translation of the Tangut, which means something quite different from Daosha. That's basically semantic translation, because what the 2 Tangut characters, Guqi, what they mean is the art or the teaching of salvation. So it is something, I mean, it emerges all over, but so far we do not have textual evidence. Yeah, so I mean, we do not have textual evidence of like how those things were really operational in Sisha. So I personally, and many people also, we still do doubt that Taoism actually existed in Sisha. What we have here again, yeah, these are just things to illustrate, yeah, how it worked out, yeah, because we have texts of Chinese Tangut, for example, Tangut is subject matter, something which has been studied for quite some time, yeah, and we have a variety, yeah, of canonical and extra-canonical writings translated from Tibetan. Yeah, for example, this one in the middle is Sadhana of Vajravarahi, of the Jinganhaim, yeah, they're very important. Whereas at the same, this final one here is a Tangut translation of Atisha's Satya Dvayavatara. Now, again, we have Sadhanas for Vajravarahi, which corresponds very nicely with the available Tangut images, for example. And this one is something which just we are working on now, something which is very interesting. That's history of Tibetan Buddhism in Tangut. So basically, that's probably an Ingba composition. Yes, so I'm not sure, but I really, in a nutshell, I tried to like collect things that, well, something with what there is in the Tangut collection, something which, in my understanding at least, needs further study, and so hopefully there will be scholars interested in those things, so the Tangut studies in the US and the worldwide will continue. So I thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was not too boring.
Are you exhausted? Would you take some questions?
Of course, with pleasure.
Okay, if I start, you said there was, you showed us the slide of the 3 Russians, and you said
Yeah.
something like there was a pall cast over the study of Tanguts.
Yeah.
The power struggle that troubled Tangut studies from
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't catch what it was.
Well, all right, so okay, let me get that. Some of those things, they're still sensitive.
But I was gonna say, consider your audience. No one here knows anybody, right?
That's right. Okay, so this gentleman here, academician Alexeyev, I think, well, if anyone has, well, I'm not sure how you guys here are familiar with the history of Russian sinology, but he was using German system. He was Mandarin for the sinology, for the Chinese studies, basically until the very end. He died in 1940, no, in 1950 something, I'm not quite sure which one. He was Paleo's friend. He was very famous at his time. Now, what has happened is that basically all scholars in St. Petersburg, and St. Petersburg was a very good school at that time, they were somehow either his disciples or his friends, or I would say somehow related to him. Now, this person, Ivanov, yeah, he was of different origin as far as I can tell, yeah, and he was I would say, he was a brilliant linguist, and he was actually the first who started working with the Tangut collection. As my professor Kichanov, and I never really pursued that too deeply. But Ivanov was the first one who composed initial, of course, or preliminary Tangut dictionary. Where is it now? Nobody really knows. Well, because, you know, as in the 30s, during Stalin time, they all had, well, similar doom, I would say. Doesn't survive. But he made a first publication of the Pearl in Hand, this one with the 4 lines, and this became internationally available. And also he was the first to publish several parallel texts, Buddhist sutras actually. I mean Tangut Chinese, yeah, especially the Maitreya's Ascent to the Dushtaha, yeah. Yeah. So published in 1916. So here it is. Now, this, I mean, both of them, they really had problems between each other. I'm not quite sure which one it was. And then the Nevsky. Nevsky was originally, as said, is well known, was a Japanologist. He was close disciple of Alexeyev, and in 1913 that was, Nevsky went to Japan to study, to improve his Japanese. There is also this very famous story when he first came to a hotel in Tokyo and started talking in Japanese, and he was very proud of his Japanese, unlike myself. And he realized that nobody was able to understand what he was saying. And he was all very upset. And then there was another gentleman who came up and said that you should excuse those people. They are stupid, they are uneducated, yeah? Because you are talking to them in the language of Genji Monogatari. And, no, it's quite it's quite obvious that they won't understand. I can hardly understand you. And yes, so this is how that happened. And so Nevsky went the war and then the revolution, and he was supposed to stay in Japan for like 2 years to prepare himself for the professorship in the Japanese studies. Now what happened later is that he was actually never able to return. No, not for a long while. He went to Osaka, and there was this Osaka, I think it was like a commercial university or something, and he was teaching English and Russian there. But at the same time he developed interest in Tangut and Ivanov at that moment. And Ivanov went to Beijing. At that time it was early 20s. And brought with him pictures, the photographs, of Tangut texts with Tibetan transcriptions and of several dictionaries. And Nevsky started doing this work. Now, when Nevsky in early 30s, he finally returned, Alexeyev did everything in his power just to get Ivanov away from those Tangut studies. And handed all over to Nevsky. Because, you see, I mean, I was always, well, some people don't like the way I put it, but I think it's correct. You see, the problem is that when we look in those Tangut dictionaries, and this was Nevsky was doing basically, service of Tangut literature, and another thing which is a great achievement, of course, as the putting together of the first Tangut dictionary. Now, but you see, the problem is with that, is that, as I said today, the Tanguts left so much lexical material, lexicographical materials, dictionaries, rhyme tables, you name it, that if one has basic knowledge of how the rhyme tables, for example, of the Sung dynasty, for example, Zhizhang Yuntu by Sima Guang, of how this is organized, or let's say not Wenhai, but Guangyun, what it is about. If one knows that, it's actually not very hard to reconstruct Tangut phonetics. And especially if we consider that. So this was something which, and so Alexeyev, he did everything he could to get rid of Ivanov, and then he basically passed those things over to Nevsky. He was, just like I said, a Mandarin. He was the person to decide. I mean, who does what, who comes, who goes, who stays where, who does what, Of course, later on he was also not so happy, but this was a very good choice, of course, because Nevsky had very good knowledge of basically everything, And what is important is he was trained in linguistics, which was not so common at that time, For example, Alexeyev himself, he didn't know Yinyun, the phonetics, phonology, yeah? Whereas Nevsky did, and so he learned this from Ivanov, yeah? So it's all very complicated and also very personal, yeah? And then, again, yeah, because it all continued, yeah? When my professor Kichanov first became interested in the Tangut studies, what has happened is that Nevsky's dictionary only existed in the manuscript form. It was his, basically, in his students' copybooks. And at that time, the director of the Institute of Oriental Studies was academician Orbeli, also another very interesting character. What he did is that he put Nevsky's materials into a safe box and never allowed anybody to actually look at those. And only after quite a long time, my professor Kichanov, he was actually able to glance at those things, yeah? And of course this was a fundamental achievement at that time. So this was something, because, I mean, it really, because what Nevsky did, of course, just like I said, we can say it easy, but nobody did that before. I mean, and what he really did, I think, and everything else also builds upon him, was Laufer was able to identify the language